You're welcome back. Well, as Nigeria celebrates our 60th independence, digital transformation at the Nigerian Exchange Group gains momentum, especially as the Technovation Conference, which was held last week. The Chief Executive Officer of Nigerian Exchange Limited, Mr. Popoola, speaks with us now on how the NGX plans to drive this transformation and other developments at the exchange. Good to have you, Mr. Popoola. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me.
Good to have you. Well, what were some of the take-home points from the NGX Technovation Conference that you held last week?
Okay, it was really an event that we had arranged to bring together most of the players within tech, fintech. You spoke about ICT, for example, with the previous speaker, previous guest that you had. So the exchange, post this corporate restructuring that we just had, the demutualization. One of our strategic pillars now is a focus on technology. And this really is what the event centered around. When we think through technology, it really is along a few, I would say, dimensions. First and foremost is how do we engage more with our consumers through technology? If you think of that as a last mile delivery through technology of the exchange's products. Secondly, is really how do we then attract tech stocks and tech companies to the exchange? The exchange would like to be a venue for capital formation for technology companies in Nigeria. I think that there's general agreement that the companies of the future and really perhaps the driver of a lot of the economic activity in Nigeria going forward is through technology. So we spent quite some time really thinking through how the exchange can position itself to be helpful to this ecosystem. And then thirdly, of course, is everything around advocacy, regulation for technology, how the exchange can help to bridge that divide between what the techpreneurs do with what regulation also asks to be done on sort of the other hand. So this really is what the event centered around. And there were lots of just thoughts and ideas really about how the future is now ultimately what sort of technology themes will be driving both the country and the markets going forward.
Well, very interesting points you made there, talking about engaging your customers, attracting tech stocks, and advocacy and regulation. But taking it away from the conference to the implementation, what's the game plan? What's the implementation plan? What changes should your customers expect to see, and when?
Okay. Thank you very much. So one of the things that we've done, if we speak, for example, on the subject of capital formation for technology companies, and if we go back to the basics and ask whether tech companies can list easily today on the exchange, whether as a means to raise capital or whether as a means for liquidity for those who already invested in the companies, the answer is that there's work that needs to be done. So we are taking a look, for example, at our rules. We are asking ourselves also if we can be a little bit more innovative as we look to court technology companies. So all that body of work, which is on one part internal to NGX, but on the other hand, external to our regulator, the SEC, that body of work is currently going on so that ultimately we can, have a platform and an exchange whose rules and whose sort of governance requirements are things that we think that technology companies will be able to meet. The other bit around what I spoke earlier, the last mile distribution of our products, really how can we through technology interact more with retail investors? That body of work also we're doing not just by ourselves, but coordinating with stakeholders across the capital markets everywhere, including the SEC as well, the apex regulator, to be able to meet, for example, millennials. You'll find that millennials are not actively engaged today within the capital markets. Part of the reason for that is that we need to meet these millennials where they actually spend time, which is on their sort of mobile devices or tablets. This is also work that we're doing. And then thirdly, is internal to our exchange. One of the things that you will find, and we'll discuss this at length, is that the exchange today is actually highly digitized. We have been trading remotely now for close to 2 years, and it's not been a single day of downtime. I think that speaks really to how much technology has been embraced at the exchange. Started to register and to license what we'll call sub-brokers with a digital platform, which also should help further distribute offerings through technology. So really today, the technology discussion is around the exchanges digitized. How then do you take, if you want to call it a vertical integration further through technology to the last mile? If you look across the banking sector, this has been done. You can today very easily on your phone, in the space of minutes, from being unbanked, get access to the banking sector and to the financial system. We're really trying to answer that question for the capital markets.
So you also talked a lot about partnerships at the conference. I would like to know what partnerships have been built or are being built to advance this technology adoption that you talk about in the Nigerian capital market. Because I asked this because when the central bank came up with the e-Naira and then announced that they're working with Beat Inc., you know, there were a lot of conversations around that. So I'd like to have an idea, the direction that the NGX is taking in this area.
Okay, thank you very much. I think one of the benefits of this demutualization process that we've gone through is that it does free up then the operating exchange NGX to be able to get into partnerships with partners that perhaps may have been a little bit more difficult decisions to have made when the regulation business was attached to the exchange. So partnerships here would be really partnerships with a lot of our stakeholders, partnerships with our regulator, partnerships with companies within ICT, companies in the telecommunication space, partnerships with financial institutions. If you look in the banking sector today, one of the trends is sort of an evolution to a holdco structure by banks. And in those holding company structures are verticals that relates to capital markets. And we'd be looking really to enter into partnerships with such institutions. If you think about the fact that many of those institutions have a reach and a depth that we don't quite match in the capital markets today, this is really how we're thinking about partnerships and the future. And then, of course, partnerships with international partners, exchanges globally, and all the sort of, capital market operators globally are the sorts of partnerships that we'll be looking to enter into.
So the Corporate Affairs Commission has completed the incorporation of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company in line with the provisions of the Petroleum Industry Act. What does this mean for the NGX?
What I would do here is I'll just stick with, publicly available comments. I think that, publicly the NNPC has spoken about a potential listing. This has been in sort of public discourse recently. And so we at the NGX, working with, again, our regulator, are doing everything that we can to make sure that they're prepared for such an activity as they sort of make their decisions. But I think over and beyond, what it does also is the signaling. You spoke earlier with your prior guest about the ease of doing business. I think that a move like this that we've seen around this very key piece of very important legislation does demonstrate that Nigeria is open to business, that Nigeria is open to investments. And I think that there then is a knock-on effect of that sort of wider to the capital market. So I think these are some of the benefits there. Of course, also it opens up the NNPC to other forms of financing. We are making our markets available to the NNPC for sources of financing, whether that's through debts, whether it's through equity, like we spoke to the listing, or perhaps a combination thereof, are some of the things that I think that this announcement allows them to do.
All right. Nigeria is celebrating 61 years. The NGX is celebrating 60 years. What's the outlook for the rest of the year, the first quarter of next year? What should we be looking forward to from the NGX, especially as you make boasts of your demutualization and, of course, the technovation that you are inculcating into the running of the NGX?
All right, your question nearly threw me off. Normally, I've heard questions like, "What's the next 60 years?" I haven't heard next 6 months.
Well,
So thank
I
you
like to
very
be
much for
real. I like to
that.
be real.
Thank you very much. I think what you would find from us in the next 6 months is a very strong focus on technology. You would find an exchange that is doing a lot of work in being able to attract technology companies and being able to be a base and a basis for capital formation for tech companies. Also, what you would find in the next 6 months, there are a couple of deals and transactions that we're hoping will come to the market. These are landmark transactions that we think should reinvigorate and revive the markets, particularly the retail segment of our markets. And then, of course, the third thing is a lot of advocacy. We're putting events together. In the next 6 months, there should be quite some activity from the exchange, working with a lot of the policymakers to really try to situate the capital market discourse, make it front and center, and really try to put some of the pressing issues, I think, throw it in the open for policymakers to make decisions around. I think it's really what the next 6 months looks like for us. And then speaking broadly away from that, really the deeper questions around how do we get more listings to the exchange? How do we open up the depth and liquidity of our trading? These are questions that we'll be looking for answers to as we go through the course of the next year.
And so we'll be looking out for those in the next 6 months. Thank you so much, Mr. Temi Popoola, the Chief Executive Officer of the NGX, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for having me. You too.
You're welcome. Yeah.